On today's show, let's get ahead of ourselves. Are the Mavs title contenders now? People are starting to talk about them like they are. We'll talk about what makes a title contender and if the Mavs are that, what could hold them back. And we'll talk about the Mavs game against the Kings coming up on today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm Luka Doncic and this is Locked On Mavericks.
Mavericks, NBA champions. Bang! It's good! And the Mavericks have won the game!
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Loyalty never fades away.
And welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager for the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for being part of the show, making Locked On Mavs your first listen today on any podcast platform. Apple, Spotify, all that. The best way you can help us grow the show is to listen every day, leave a 5-star review, like the video, and comment anything below. Let me know in the comment section, do you believe the Mavs are title contenders now? Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Today, we'll preview the Mavs game against the Kings coming up on Friday. Today, if you're listening to that on Friday, a couple of thoughts on that as I've been sitting here on them. But today, I kind of want to talk about if the Mavs are title contenders. I was listening to Tim Legler, former NBA player, very smart guy on the NBA. And he's really high on the Mavs and really thinks and really believes in what they can be. And so let's really look through that and let's decipher, can the Mavericks be an actual title contender? Can we consider them a title contender now because of how they've played recently? And so we'll talk all about that. We'll talk about what would hold them back from being title contenders. We'll talk about how has their ceiling changed. But let's start here. Has the Mavs ceiling changed? And why has the Mavs ceiling changed? It can't be just as simple as, well, they traded for PJ Washington and they traded for Daniel Gafford. And so now their ceiling has changed, right? That seems too easy to me, right? It can't just be that. It can't just be, well, they got the Wizards center that they didn't start for a long time and they finally just started and they had one of their worst seasons ever when they were starting him. And they also added this wing that was coming off the bench for one of the worst teams in the NBA, the Charlotte Hornets, and now the Mavs are title contenders. It's been a slow process, and going back to last season, you see the players that were around Luka, and now you see the players that are around him now. They bring in Kyrie, doesn't really go that well at the beginning. Get an offseason under your belt. He's hurt at the beginning of the season a little bit, and then you start to really see what it can really be lately. And Kyrie has come on and been that second star that they needed to fill in the gaps as the second star that Luka needs. Then you get the centers. The center spot was such a hole for the Mavericks for so long. And you look at what the Mavericks have done, and we'll look at what Nico Harrison has done with this group. You tank the last two games, keep the draft pick, you draft Derek Lively. It ends up being, I don't know, it's definitely it's at least the third best draft day trade of all time for the Mavericks because one of them got them Luka Doncic. The other one got them Dirk Nowitzki. So I don't know if the Derek Lively draft day trade can ever be number one or number two on the list. It's kind of hard to do. Just a random thing. But the Mavs make another draft day trade. They've been good at those, and they bring in Derek Lively, and he helped kind of settle the ship a little bit as in terms of bringing in somebody that can defend, rebound, block shots, do that kind of stuff. Pick and roll and catch lobs and all that. They sign Derek Jones Jr. They sign Dante Exum to these minimum deals, taking a risk on Dante Exum when he was not even in the NBA. And so you kind of take a risk on a guy like that. Derek Jones Jr. comes in and he's promised a bigger role than he was probably promised on some other teams. You still got Tim Hardaway Jr. You still have Josh Green. You still have Maxi Kleber. You still have Dwight Powell. And you take this team into this next stage where you make these trades, and now all of a sudden this team has a couple things. This team has an identity. They have an identity. They know what they are. And when a Luka Doncic led team has an identity, you got to watch out. And honestly, if I'm going to say, are they a title contender? I'm going to say yes, just because of that. Simply because a Luka Doncic led team with an identity is dangerous. The star power is always there. You look across, all right, who are the title contenders? This is another thing I wanted to do. Who are the title contenders this season? Usually, you look back and you go, okay, if you're top 10 in offensive rating and defensive rating, that makes you a title contender for the whole season. You got to prove it the whole season. Prove that you're a top 10 in both. So then that would be Boston. They're first in offense, third in defense. Denver, seventh in offense, ninth in defense. That feels like the finals everybody's waiting for right now. Then you also have OKC. They're fourth in offense, sixth in defense. They're top 10 in both. They're almost top 5 in both. And then the other one is the Knicks. 10th in offense, 8th in defense, and they've had wild injuries all over the place and played ridiculous minutes for some of these guys. Shout out to Tom Thibodeau. But those would be the 4 teams right now. And so that's normally what you think. Conventionally, the last couple, you go back, and there have only been a couple of exceptions of teams that were not in the top 10 in offensive rating and defensive rating that have been actual contenders and have actually gone to the finals. But honestly, you look at last 2 years, that trend has completely been ruined. You can blame a bunch of different stuff. But Denver was 5th in offense and 17th in defense last year when they won the title. The Heat, almost the opposite. It's 25th in offense. That Heat team was awful in the regular season at times. 7th in defense for them. Golden State in 2022, 17th in offense, 2nd in defense. And Boston, when they played them in that, they were 10th in offense and they were 1st in defense. So this top 10 in both has been completely thrown out the window from the last 2 years. You go back, even the bubble. Go back to the bubble, 2020. Lakers were 10th in offense, 4th in defense. Miami was 7th in offense, 10th in defense. Like, they even matched that in the bubble. What's been going on the last couple of years is that if you have a star that gets hot, that can go in and just murder a defense, just completely pick you apart. If you have somebody like that, Jimmy Butler on the Heat, Jokic, Steph Curry, you get that guy that can go in and just can make so many problems for your team. What have we been talking about with Luka and talking about why he's a better player than a Devin Booker, than a gotta come up with other names or else I'm just thinking about Devin Booker. He's better than, a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Why he's better than some of these other players is that he can pick an offense apart with anything. He has any option in front of him. Kyrie, kind of the same thing. The passing is not as there, but the dribble moves and the one-on-one stuff with Kyrie, he's got almost every option in front of him, but Luka has every option in front of him. Make this pass, post up, drive, kick out, floater, mid-range, turnaround jumper, the Dirk shot. He's got everything. 3-point shot, step back 3, everything. He's got everything in front of him. And if you take a guy like that, put him in a playoff setting where the other team says, all right, you have at least 4 games to try and figure this out. You can't do it. Couldn't do it against Jokic. Apparently you couldn't do it against Jimmy Butler last year because he was on another level. Couldn't do it against Steph and the Warriors. The Mavs tried to do it. They couldn't beat him that season. And if you have that guy, and if you have that player, and if you have the right stuff around them, that's the thing the Mavs have been missing. They've had the guy. They've had the guy with the star power. And now they have the identity established around him. Where, what are we now? What are we, the Dallas Mavericks? What are we now? We are a big team with wings that can defend. And a big thing that I noticed that Adam Morris brought up with Tim Legler. Great stuff on the Mavericks. Both very smart guys. Obviously, Adam Morris, Locked On NBA, Locked On Nuggets, also DNVR. He said every single player on the Mavericks can screen for Luka. Amazing point. Really great point. I was very jealous of it. But every single player can screen for Luka too. Bring Kyrie up for a screen. Obviously, the centers, Gafford, Lively, bring him up. Derrick Jones Jr., bring him up. PJ Washington, I've been calling for that a lot more this season. Bring up PJ Washington for a pick and roll. Tim Hardaway Jr., he set screens for Luka, sure. Dante Exum, he set screens for Luka and Kyrie. Absolutely. And when that happens, then all of a sudden, the player with all the options already has all the options of who to attack on the other end. And so Luka can bring up, all right, let's say the worst defender is guarding Tim Hardaway Jr. Bring Tim Hardaway Jr. up for a screen. And when that happens, the recipe that the Mavericks have established the identity, they've got the start with all the options, and then they've got the offense that can find all the options in it. I think this team's ceiling has changed. And I think because the last couple of seasons, the trend of you've got to be top 10 in offense and defense have been bucked completely. I think this team could be a title contender because we don't know what real title contenders are anymore. A team can come out of nowhere, like the Heat last season totally threw everybody off, I think. You can get hot, and if you can beat the teams in front of you, you get the right matchups, and all of a sudden you're right there. Parity is back in the NBA because we have not had a dominating team in the last 5 years. Golden State's made it twice. Miami's made it twice, and that's it out of 5 years. There's not that parity anymore because there is that parity now. There's not the dominating powers anymore. You just can't do it because it's too hard. So can the Mavericks be a title contender? Absolutely. Would I pick them to win the title? Would I pick them to be that? Would I go to FanDuel and be like, all right, let's see where they are? No, I wouldn't do that. But I think they've become title contenders now because they had the one thing. You had the guy. You had Luka. And if you've got that, you're in a really good spot to start. Mavs are plus 3,200 for the title right now. Behind Minnesota, behind the Knicks, behind the Suns. That's FanDuel. Coming up, let's get into what would help hold them back, and let's talk about what would hold the Mavericks back from winning a title. Let's get into that and more coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience will bring home the winning trophy, and hopefully for the Mavericks, can keep your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle. Level it up to peak performance from superchargers, roof rack, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. What you do, go to the website, put in the make, model, year of your car, all that kind of stuff, and it'll just list the parts that they have. They've got over 122 million different parts, so you know that those ones are exactly for your car because you've gone through the whole selection process. So you've gone through that. And with all the parts, with the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win and see what's available for you. They have other stuff too that you don't even have to be a car guy to like add a floor mat. If you need new floor mats, boom, they got them at eBay Motors. Check them out. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit. Only available to U.S. customers.
Uh-oh, guess what day it is?
Thanks for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs, being part of the show, part of the Raccoon Squad, listening every day. We appreciate each and every one of you for subscribing to the show on Apple and Spotify and listening there on the podcast. Had somebody ask me, how do I listen to a podcast the other day? And I just like, oh, you have asked the right person. Download the Spotify app, the Apple app, CastBox. I've been using CastBox. I like that one. Somebody came up to me the other day at a game. Apologies, I don't remember your name, but said, hey, I still have the Himalaya app on my phone. Shout out to everybody that made us like the top 10 podcasts on Himalaya. It was a platform that we were supporting for a while, or that was sponsoring us. They had everybody come in and we're like, all right, promote Himalaya. And Locked On Mavs became like a top 10 podcast on the whole app. It was hilarious. Mavs, are they a title contender? Tim Legler and other smart people have been talking about the Mavericks like they're dangerous. Nobody wants to play the Mavs. I think it was Brian Windhorst that said a bunch of executives and people have said, man, have you looked at the Dallas Mavericks lately? Have you seen what the Mavericks are doing? Look at what this team is doing. They've rattled off all these wins. You know, what is it? 9-1 in their last 10 games. The Mavs are doing some stuff and they're making a statement. And they made a statement against the Kings. They beat the Nuggets. They also had that win against OKC when the trade first happened. They also have a win against Phoenix in that time too. They also have 5 very bad losses in the middle of that, which is just, of course, this Mavericks team would have that. But let's talk about what hold them back, because I talked to all the glowing things, I talked to all the stuff, the reasons why the Mavericks could be a title contender and should be considered a title contender. What would hold them back? I mentioned they had 5 really bad losses. And at the end of those losses, many of you heard me say that it's time for Kidd to be done with the Mavericks. I could have couched it. And said, unless they change these things. And I probably should have, because they did change those things. They changed the effort. They changed the intensity. They changed what they were doing. Their offense has become a little bit better. They've done a lot of the right things to get to right the ship, basically. And I've always believed that this Mavericks team can win with Jason Kidd. It just came down to, there are times in the regular season where it just feels like they let go of the rope too easy. They just let it go. And then they lose, and their defense gets destroyed by the Pacers in 2 games. And they get destroyed in the fourth quarter by the Cavs by Strus getting hot and the Mavs not adjusting at all to it. They get destroyed they get beat by the Sixers without Joel Embiid. Like, those losses were just brutal. And it looked like if that's the direction the Mavs were going, they can let go of the rope. And I expected the Mavericks to let go of the rope. And instead, they grabbed it back. They pulled it, yanked it, they tied it up, and they have just completely anchored themselves now. And so could coaching have hold the Mavericks back from winning a title? Kid has proven he can win playoff games. They won against the best team in the NBA 2 years ago against the Phoenix Suns. They won against the Jazz, who were a well-coached team with Quinn Snyder at the time. And when has shaky coaching, whether you believe that Kid is a shaky coach or not, this could be either way. When has shaky coaching held teams back before going to the title? Listen to the coaches that have made the title, that have made the finals over the last couple of years. Phoenix, Monty Williams. Look at him in Detroit right now. He's not looked at as one of the best coaches in the NBA. He's not even a top 15 coach probably right now. Milwaukee, they had Mike Budenholzer. They let him go. Lost in the first round. The Lakers, when they won in 2020, Frank Vogel, he's not coaching for them right now. Got fired. Go back to 2015. The Cavs, the first time they made the finals, the first time of the 4 in a row that they made the finals. First Cavs Warriors, let me put it that way. First Cavs Warriors finals. The head coach was not Ty Lue. It was David Blatt, and he got fired after that. Talk about a shaky coach. He's not even back in the NBA. OKC made it in 2012 with Scott Brooks as the coach, who then became the Wizards coach, who then was not good enough to be the Wizards coach, who then became an assistant coach. So if you think Jason Kidd is a shaky coach, then that whole list should make you feel really good about the Mavericks potentially being a top. And if you weren't worried about Jason Kidd being a shaky coach, then you're not worried about that. You're not worried about coaching at all. But if you are worried about it, teams with coaches that were considered shaky have made the finals before. I don't think that'll hold the Mavs back. Shooting, this will hold the Mavs back. Let me go to an absolute one. The thing with the Mavericks is, and has always been, can they hit when it matters? You look at that Kings game, and yeah, they completely over accounted for and completely took all the misses that they've made. They've missed the first couple weeks of this whole experiment with the trades, and they just made up for it in one game. 22 out of 39 against the Kings. They're not going to shoot like that. But can they make it when it matters? Remember the Lakers game earlier this season when Dante Exum hit the 5 threes. Remember Derrick Jones Jr. has hit 5 threes in a couple games this season. Remember Tim Hardaway scoring 40 in that game when hitting a bunch of threes. Can they make it when it matters? That's going to be the big thing. And if they don't, that will hold them back for sure. Because teams are going to allow guys to be left wide open. It's going to happen. They can bring up PJ Washington for screens and try and figure it out that way. But if PJ Washington doesn't hit some of those threes, he hit 3 threes off of pick and pops at the beginning of the Kings game. If he doesn't hit those, what does that change for the momentum of the Mavs? Maybe the Kings go on a run at the beginning. All this stuff can be very fragile and very it can change in an instant. I think this shooting could really hold them back, but they can shoot. That's the good thing about this is that it's not like they just don't have shooting. They have it. I think they have enough to go and make a run here. But can they hit when it matters? That's going to be really big. The other thing, sadly, is injury. I'm looking at Luka, and I'm trying to figure out if Luka's going to be 100% at any point. And if you watched in 2011, Dirk was not 100%. Dirk was dealing with the fever and finger and all kinds of stuff on the way to that title. And so you don't have to be 100%. But I'm worried if Achilles soreness, Luka was questionable with Achilles soreness before the Kings game. I'm worried about that for sure. Injuries will hold them back. Shooting will hold them back. Their defense, I think their defense can still fall apart. That's the last thing I'll talk about here with things that could hold them back. Been on a good run lately. Played well against the Kings, and I think they can play well. What have I said for years? So sick of saying this, but it's true. Their defense is predicated on effort, communication, being together, rotating to the right guy. If they can do that, and they usually do ramp it up when it matters. Go back to 2022. This team ramped up the defense. They became a really good defensive team by the end of the season. They were top 10 in defense by the end of the season. They were on a run, and all of a sudden, and now this Mavericks team, in the run that they've had with these new guys, they've been incredibly good defensively. Go back to February 5th when the Mavs first started that first win streak. And if you go back to there, the Mavericks defense is 7th. They've proven that they can be that type of defensive team. They've also had games where they just completely let go of the rope in it. So hopefully they've worked some of those out, those kinks out. And maybe this is a different defensive Mavs team than we've been used to. And that would be awesome, because if they can hold up that defense and Luka and Kyrie can make enough things happen and the shooters can make enough shots, this team can be a title contender. This team can make a run. Can't believe we're back. Can't believe we're back. I was down so bad after those losses in the middle there. Oh my God, we're back. But coming up, let's talk about this Kings game. Let's do a preview on what the Mavs need to do to win this next game. And does this game matter as much as the first game? We'll talk about that and more coming up. Oh, today's episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you that kind of driver that likes to take things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the corner? I'm looking at an adventure. This summer, I need to go on some kind of adventure, do something, see the world, do something, and maybe I can do it in the 2024 Nissan Rogue. It's perfect for city drives and what I yearn for, the Great Escape. Class exclusive, Google built in is your always updating assistant, on call for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store built right into your car. How about that? Google Maps built into your car. Let's go. 2024 Nissan Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. Also, check out the Pathfinder. The 2024 Nissan Pathfinder has room for up to 8, an expansive cargo capacity, advanced available 4x4 capability, 284 horsepower, 6,000 pounds of towing. When adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to answer. So go NissanUSA.com, shop Nissan USA, take the Rogue, the Pathfinder, or the Nissan Armada, and go find your next big adventure at shopNissanUSA.com. Also brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. This is pretty cool. We've got these 24/7 streaming shows. You've seen them on YouTube. They're also on Amazon Fire TV. Amazon Fire TV is your destination for sports, live games, highlights, to go in-depth highlights and in-depth analysis like Locked On offers. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire Stick that you just plug right into a TV and make it smart, and then you can stream all the channels and all that. Fire TV has recently created these Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us here at Locked On. Most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels lets you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more. Check it out. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. Again, amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV.
Uh-oh, guess what day it is? Guess what day it is, huh? Anybody? Okay.
All right, Isaac, let's get into Mavs versus Kings. We had a great episode with Matt George, really knowledgeable about the Kings. There may not be anybody else out there that knows more about the Kings than Matt George. So go listen to that episode yesterday if you didn't listen to that one. Great stuff on there. Let's just talk about a couple of key things I think the Mavs need to do to beat the Kings again. So two of my things from the preview before the first game still hold up. Contain the paint and contain Sabonis. Huge thing for the Mavericks. Kings are 4-16. This is a stat I'm going to say a million times. They're 4-16 when the Kings make under 45 points in the paint. When they score under 45 points in the paint, they are 4-16. The Mavs are one of those losses. Kings 38 points in the paint. Contain the paint, contain Sabonis. Lively did an excellent job. In the watch back, I went back and watched the third quarter for subtext. Subscribe to subtext if you want. Text straight to your phone. There's the number right there on the screen. I went back and I was like, all right, was Lively's defense as good as I thought it was? Because on first watch, I was like, man, I was really impressed. And I was completely impressed. Again, the second time. There are 3 or 4 times where Sabonis was like, all right, it's time. I got to call my number. I'm an all-star. I'm an all-NBA type player. Let me go score on Lively. And Lively was like, I don't think so. I'm going to stay right here. My feet are going to be planted. I'm taller than you. I'm longer than you. That 7'7" wingspan came in so handy against Sabonis. And Sabonis put up some numbers, but only 12 points. Got 11 boards. 10 of them were on defensive end. 9 assists. A lot of them are handoffs. Like, it was just not an impressive game for a player like him. And so can they do it again? Gafford got in foul trouble a little bit early too. Do they play Lively more this time? Because Lively did really well against him. I actually would like that. Play Lively a little bit more. He played 22 minutes. They actually almost played the exact same amount of time. But lately, Gafford's been playing more than Lively. I would keep it about the same or play Lively a little more. because I thought he did a great job on Sabonis. Contain the paint. That's the first thing. Limit De'Aaron Fox. That worked. It worked the first time. Limit what De'Aaron Fox can do. Derrick Jones Jr., great job. All the guards switching, everybody. Luka, Kyrie, even PJ Washington, even Tim Hardaway Jr., great job just containing and making sure that De'Aaron Fox took 18 shots and only scored 18 points. That's a bad game for a star. Limit De'Aaron Fox. When he scores, last time the Mavs played him, he scored 30 points, and they won. So I'll leave it simply as that, is just contain De'Aaron Fox. It's the two stars, paint and Fox. And all they like to do is drive into the paint, kick out for threes, or dump it down to Sabonis and kick out to threes. If you contain both those things, then it's only about the threes. The other thing I think the Mavs need to do is win in the trenches. Points in the paint, Mavs won 44-38. Fast break points, Mavs won 18-8. Turnovers, Mavs had less, 9-13. And bench points, this was surprising to me. The Mavs bench has not been like lighting it up lately, but 48-32 against Malik Monk. And I guess they don't have Kevin Huerter, so I guess that messes with some of their bench depth for the Kings. But win in the trenches, win in those other areas, because I think that's something that the Mavs, if they can win in those little areas on the fringes, they didn't win in offensive rebounds. Kings had 11 offensive rebounds, but they only had 10 second chance points. So they're only scoring on half of those, which you're fine with. Like, hey, maybe they got, you get a couple offensive rebounds in one possession, and that number can be really inflated. Is this game as important as the first one? Yes. They've made this statement, but if they can get the tiebreaker, or if they can tie it up, this is huge, because this is like a double whammy game, because you get the tiebreaker, and then also you'll get the another conference win, and the Kings will have a conference loss. And that matters with standings too, with tiebreakers as well, because they'll be tied 2-2 if the Mavs win this game on Friday. They'll be tied 2-2. And then it goes head to head if the team is winning the division, and then they'll go conference win and loss. And right now in the conference, since Mavs and Kings are not in the same division, you go to conference. I think I messed that up last week, but that's okay. If you go to conference, the Kings are 27-18, and the Mavs are 27-19. So the Kings have that advantage by a half game, one loss right now. Mavs have one more Western Conference loss than the Kings do. And so huge tiebreaker, and then conference tiebreaker right there. That'd be massive. The other reason why it's a huge game and as big as the first one is because everybody is winning all the time. Mavs are only a half game ahead of the Suns. Technically like a whole game because of the tiebreaker, but they're only a half game ahead of the Suns. They're 1 game back from the Pelicans. They're 2 games still back from the Clippers. They're only 1 game ahead of the Kings. You lose to the Kings, and all of a sudden you go back down to, what do you go back down to 8th? You go back down to 7th, go back down to 8th. And the Lakers, they keep winning too. Mavs are only 2.5 games ahead of them, which seems like a lot, but it's not a ton. So this game is very important. The statement has been made, but you got to get the win for the win column, for the conference, for the tiebreaker, for all that stuff. They've got to get it. And I'm very curious how the Kings look when they're not dead tired after playing 5 games in 7 nights. They got 2 days off. Mavs had 2 days off there. And so we'll see what happens. There you go. Let me know in the comment section if you think the Mavs are title contenders. And I'm curious what you guys have to say about that. We'll be back tomorrow. Me and Slightly will have you covered for the post-game show. Whether we win or lose, we'll have that covered for you. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked on Mavs.
Peace out.